What's with the blue blockers? Partly to block blue light, but mostly makes the light hurt less. Dude, every waking moment is still torment. So yeah, we're still on that short stream, not touching video games, only on the computer when I have to like edit or stream. So welcome to Nightmare World. But if I'm going to suffer, you are going to suffer as well. So this furry went off on Turkey Tom or whatever, drew attention to themselves. People looked at their channel, and their channel features an incredible piece of content that I think we should dive into. It's very highly intellectual. It might be too complex for some of our minds to grapple with. I haven't pre-watched all of it. It looks pretty painful. The piece of content in question, the essay, the video essay, is discussing, or perhaps even answering the question, are furries a minority group? And what really is a furry, if you think about it? I mean, presumably, the reason to consider whether furries are a minority or not would be to discern whether or not they should be included as a protected class. But you can just argue that without them being a minority. Because, I mean, that includes veterans. There's a pun there. There's a pun there. Furry animal vet, like veterinarian instead of... There's a pun, there's a joke to be done. I mean, furry vets are just the Air Force, right? Do furries have in-suit microclimates? How many furries die every year during spring and summer? I need something to lift me up. What's the show that got called fascist because there's a police dog? Is it Paw Patrol? Paw Patrol seems right, but it's also one of those things where anyone could make it up. Anyway. Clubbedseal, a furry on Twitter. Doesn't like Turkey Tom, I guess. People saw that this fellow has a "Are furries a minority group" video. Ooh. That in itself, pretty cringe question to tackle, because it seems like such an obvious no. Perhaps he himself will say no. Perhaps it'll even be reasonable, who knows? Let's give these guys, or this guy. We're not giving all furries a chance. That's too far. That's way too far. We're gonna give this fellow. If he comes off reasonably, will I become a furry? I already am. I'm an armadillo furry. That's why I shaved my head.
In a video previous to this one, I danced around the idea of labeling furries as a minority group. It's a load.
Why would that be the case? Do I have to, is there required reading? What's
in a video previous
racism in the furry fandom. Okay.
To this one, I danced around the idea of labeling furries as a minority group.
I don't really want to know why that would occur. It immediately concerns me that the context of discussing this question is a video about racism in which he danced around discussion of furries being a minority.
Group. It's a loaded term with a dated history of misuse and questioning, but it's also a label that I've been interested.
I'm already getting brain blasted. Normally, when you're going to describe something as a loaded term, it's because of how it's just been used. You have a chance to lay out your own definition. Why even call it a loaded term? Normally, the relevance of something being loaded comes as well from the audience for whom there are connotations associated with the word. Something can be loaded differently to different audiences. And a dated history of misuse, okay.
In determining.
We as humans appreciate simplicity. If we can define a term under strict definitions, it can allow us to clearly outline boundaries.
What animal is this? I don't think Slavs count as animals you can be a furry of. Can you be like, I'm a furry, here's my Slav suit? I don't think that works.
I mean, if we're going to spend so much time talking about hate towards a particular group, we should at least be able to define what we're talking about. Are we talking about valid criticism, or are we talking about discrimination? If we cannot...
Sure, but please don't ramble in circles. Just define it. You can just define it without justifying needing to define things. You can just define it. Define your terms, bro.
Define these terms, then it is fruitless to even entertain a conversation on how to prevent it. For each alternative answer provides vastly different methods of prevention. I understand that labels are annoying. Many people...
Methods of prevention? We're hopping, and he's already like jumped forward to the assumption that something needs to be prevented. Not just, we'll talk past each other, you won't understand what I'm saying. If you come in with a certain understanding and what I'm saying relates to a different definition, we won't really be communicating, we won't be understanding. It's gone straight to, yes, hate needs to be stopped. Depending on how we define it, the method of preventing it is different. What a weird perspective already.
People even swear off using them in a bid to rid themselves of its restrictions, and certain labels can be seen as unnecessary, even damaging to whatever or whoever the label defines.
However, something being confusing, even to the point of frustrating, doesn't make it any less valid. Understanding where discrimination stems from and the position that it puts groups in makes the challenge of defeating it far more streamlined. Individually speaking, ridding one's
makes the challenge of defeating it far more streamlined. What if it's just impossible? He's complaining about a lack of clarity, confusion, so on and so forth, and needing to be on the same page. What is defeating it? Why is there a guaranteed victory? It suggests, or a guaranteed path to victory, it suggests that there's a method in mind, and the urge to define things carefully is to guarantee that people will come to the conclusion that a certain method needs to be used. What if people just think it's f***ing weird? What if it's just a natural reaction to see this stuff and be like, ugh! And that's where hatred comes from. How do you prevent that? There is no streamlined path to preventing that isn't insane. So no, it's not true. Not true that it will help you get a streamlined path. There might be no path.
Self of labels can be liberating. In a world that's amassed with horror and confusion, it is no fault of one's own to ignore the socially defined labels. The ones that they see as just
no fault of one's own to ignore labels. Again, just what a broad, contextless, meaningless statement though. If someone tells me they're a furry, I'm not ignoring that, okay? I'll probably be like, yeah, but what kind? More detail, please.
Unimportant. Gender, for example, can be seen as restricting to many people's identity and mental health. To combat gender, someone can internally ignore and reject the concept entirely.
There's a difference between ignoring it with regard to applying it to yourself and ignoring other people's use. Pretty hard to ignore gender if you go outside, look at the news, deal with other people, right? I believe the modern gender ideology stuff, yeah, that's made up trash. Don't believe in it. Other people do. Other people will try and make you conform to it. Ignoring, not really possible. What are you talking about?
Feasible and understandable process for those whom it fits. Although gender across cultures and societally cannot be simply eradicated to the same extent. Even for being a social concept that is at least biologically non-existent, social definitions sprout amongst cultures independently from one another. A common misconception.
What are you This is meant to be a video about furries. Chill.
To the same extent. Even for being a social concept that is at least biologically non-existent, social definitions sprout amongst cultures independently from one another.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Do you not think there's connection? But why? I don't want to get into gender stuff if we're going to talk about... This was meant to be a furry cringe video, okay? Get back on the track. Get back on the railroad, okay?
Common misconception is to class alternative genders to the Western male and female as new, thus giving way for a media-proposed panic and neophobia.
What do you... This... Oh, God, it's one of these videos where they just pack in as much as they can. This is the Family Guy school of political or social content, where you just show people as many things that they recognize as possible in as short a time as possible. Just pack it in, pack it in, pack it in.
Although this is woefully incorrect, as gender does exist in history which diverses from this male and female narrative.
History which diverses from this male and female narrative. You've already scrambled with definitions. You've brought up a separation between gender and sex, or gender and biology, and now you're using male and female in reference to new genders appearing. Normally people like to differentiate between sex and gender by saying male and female versus man and woman. It's already like a mess. You're preaching clarity and just throwing mud. And how is this going to relate back to your point? Please, for the love of God.
In turn, labels of gender make sense, so eradicating such a concept would not only go against history, but it would conflict with people.
Eradicating a concept would not only go against history. If this guy had hit his head on the other side, I presume he must have hit his head at some point. If he'd hit his head on the other side, this video will be about why racism is good and how it would go against history to eradicate it.
Culture. Looking at it from an outsider's perspective, these definitions make it far easier for someone to identify a problem and minimize stigma on a societal level. If we know what a thing is, and we can differentiate...
Sorry bro, what methodology are you getting out of what you just said? What's the methodology? How does that make it easier to do anything?
It from another thing, then we can properly address the issue.
Furthermore, the specificity of labels can create contradictions. A label could contradict the actual definition of that name.
Do you mean how the label is used might not line up with what the word itself means from like an etymological standpoint. What does he mean? This could mean multiple things. My man's preaching clarity and just making more and more and more and more messes.
Or the act of giving something a label could actually contradict the label itself. For example,
the act of giving something a label could contradict the label itself. Okay.
A gender, which refers to someone who does not identify with having a gender. So
that doesn't create a contradiction. Unless you consider a gender to be a gender, there's no problem.
Label for this person's gender is to say that they...
No, it's not the label for the gender. Pragmatically, if there was a box to put a gender into, they would put this into that box. That doesn't mean it is a gender. It means it's like saying NA. You're not... If it's like, what allergies do you have? And you say none. There's no contradiction. You're not saying I have a none allergy. You're saying this doesn't apply.
Don't have a label for their gender. Linguistically, it kind of creates a paradox.
No, it doesn't. It actually doesn't if you're not retarded. Not at all. Nope.
Perhaps it's implying that the label of agender is true yet poorly worded. Not that I can propose the better alternative. I like to see the label as a form of revolt, to act out against the unnecessary nature of gender and act as just a person on Earth. Putting it like that frankly sounds badass, transphobes be quivering. But in general, labels are a form of convenience. We use them to simplify other existing terms that may be too complex or overly complicated into shorter, more concise definitions.
Why? Is he going to get why right? This is so simple, but I feel like he's going to get why wrong. Because at the start he says, we like simplicity. It's not just that we like it. It's that if every time you wanted to tell someone something about yourself, you had to fully explain it, right? The same as any other higher tier word that encompasses more information. You don't want to have to explain it from first principles every time. A label gives gist quickly.
In turn, to create another label, we should consider any possible contradictions that may arise for the sake of convenience.
As one more example, which...
Also, don't believe labels are primarily the result of artifice. Like, you don't come up with a label normally. They come into common use and people start using it a bit more organically.
Doesn't relate to gender this time.
And when they don't, people hate it. Wait a second, I think I missed something. Let me go back for a second.
As one more example, which doesn't relate to gender this time,
okay.
The Holocaust. Which I'm now realizing I'm doing the most clappy thing ever. You know, making a video about furries and only 3 minutes in, immediately diverging into talking about a mass genocide. My ability to string together loosely related topics is accidental and stupid. Anyway, the
I don't think it is accidental. I think you're holding up a spork right now. I think you have an email that is to Penguin of Doom.
The etymology of the word is derived from both Latin and Greek roots, forming the compound word
like destruction by fire.
Holocaustum, which can be interpreted through English equivalent Holocaust. Breaking the word down into its components, we have holo, meaning something whole or entire.
Oh my god. He's a moron. He considers that if a word is used in a way, if a word is used to describe something, but if you break down the prefix and suffix of a word and you look at it in terms of etymology, the roots of the word, if you take that literally and it doesn't line up with what the word is used for, that's a contradiction. No, that's straight up just not how it works.
Then kostos, meaning burnt or red hot. Thus, the combination of these terms can be interpreted as entirely burnt or something wholly burnt up. Essentially, Holocaust can be used as a suffix to describe a mass loss or total destruction of lives. By use of the phrase the Holocaust, we are often referring to the Jewish Holocaust, which we...
Do people call it the Jewish Holocaust? I thought the Holocaust was all the mass killing, of which Jews were the single largest group, but loads of other people were too. Jews were the largest single group, but they were less than half of the people systematically slaughtered.
distinguishing from other terms such as the Armenian Holocaust, a coexistent term which ran alongside the far more common Armenian genocide, which was used in news headlines around the time of World War I. At the time of these headlines, the word Holocaust had no connotation to the Jewish population. That was something attributed to the term in the decades after. What this means is that set definitions to labels can nearly be ignored when added context to the word amplifies or minimizes the severity or magnitude of its implications. For a few
This is if he's going where I presume he's going, this is the absolute dumbest way to do it. My prediction. He is going to say that furries should technically count, but because of the severity of discrimination against other minority groups, you can't put them in the same class. And he's going to parallel that with don't call just any bad thing a Holocaust.
Make the comparison to an event being an example of a Holocaust, then you are making a direct comparison to the genocide of Jewish populations, redefining the word under a new magnitude to how we interpret the phrase. Now I'll note that I left out
this guy's speech is a mess. Absurd mess. You're describing less something that is a matter of definition and truth or correctness, and more like you're describing a faux pas. People don't find it tasteful.
Several other factors such as religious influences, just as so to not overcomplicate my example. Still, early intentions of this label were to make it give the genocide a particular distinctness, in order to highlight its importance. Religious undertones to the label are something that is frequently ignored in modern times, for many feel that it elevates the very human issue into one of divine importance, when in actuality it may be more fitting to view Nazi soldiers and Jewish victims for what they truly are, human, thus grounding the event in reality and recognizing that people are actually
People wank off and say this stuff. I overwhelmingly don't think people actually view it this way.
Grounding the event in reality and recognizing that people are actually capable of these types of things. In a way, this can be seen
Jordan Peterson here.
As reappropriating the label, something that we've seen by many minority groups when derogatory terms are worn as badges of honor.
Wait, what's the label that's being reappropriated? Holocaust? I've lost the thread that this guy is going on. What's the reappropriation? Is this... He initially lays out, people find it inappropriate to describe things as being a Holocaust if they're not on the same scale as a genocide. However, some may think that that sort of label and its religious connotations and whatnot may elevate it into believing it's something less real, less grounded. They would prefer it to be more grounded, to view it as humans, view it as something that a human could do and would need to be stopped again, so a label can be reappropriated. That narrative trajectory makes me think he's going to talk about the people who call things a Holocaust all the time. That would be cool. I don't think that's going to happen, though.
Leave a link to two papers in the description, one on the reappropriation of stigmatizing labels, and the other to an Oxford University Press paper on the Holocaust, for which I cite for a lot of the information I just said. This paper features a far more in-depth
I have very little faith that this guy read this and got the intended meaning from it. He's going to jump away from this. Is this even worth reading what he has on screen? He's probably just scrolling a random part of it and it's not a relevant excerpt.
Explanation of religious influences that I mainly brushed over. It outsets off this line: language is really a reciprocal tool. It reveals, and at the same time, it is revealing. We know through its use it has the capabilities of shaping cultures and societies as we know them. Hopefully my brief introduction provides some insight into all the intricacies which go into labels and their effects.
Gigantic mess. You've tried to imbue your video essay with academic magic by including your summary of something and citing it, by paraphrasing something and citing it, but you've just made a mess.
Labels aren't chosen hastily, but through precise, calculated decisions that consider possible effects and consequences.
Do you say should be or are?
Labels aren't chosen hastily, but through precise, calculated decisions that...
Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't, brother. This isn't true. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. Depends on the label.
Consider possible effects and consequences. These laws of language will become useful as we progress through this video. Many of them will affect our judgment.
Laws of language. Oh no. My man looked at the analysis of one word and decided he knows the true nature of reality. Oh shit.
on how we label certain concepts. They tell us that any slight nuances in judgment lead to great consequences and therefore have to be made with increased caution.
Not necessarily. The people receiving the language is an element. It's not just like, they're not magic spells. You don't actually have that much power directly as an individual through language and your one choice. That's not what the power is. It's not Harry Potter.
It
can be very powerful, but we're talking like seismic change, not you choose a word and then people get zapped, which is what this makes it sound like.
To even introduce a key social aspect to the labels which target the use of pre-existing labels themselves, a topic that we will arrive to later in the video. But hold on, how does this relate to furries? Well, quite simple really. For over 40 years, furries have established themselves as a subculture of society. For almost an equal amount of time, the fandom has made its way into ethics discussions and debates on
Muds, sex with the furry markers. Multi-user dungeons? 1994 Wired, that sounds about right.
whether they should be accepted, exiled, or changed. This hate
I would guess from what we just saw it would be furry sex in multi-user dungeons in 94.
hatred has evolved and developed over time, certainly given the decades of time to age, and its impacts on the community cannot go understated.
Damn, who could possibly feel hatred towards that freaky shit? How is this possible? How has language and labels molded people into possibly finding that cat freaky? How did it happen?
The fandom would be unrecognizable if it weren't for the misinformative news journalism and the negative public reception.
If we were to take this misinformation and all this negative stereotyping, we should ask what position it puts the fandom in, and why would we have any incentive to add such a label onto it? Is this practice worth the effort, or is it a fruitless endeavor leading to a world indifferent to its conclusions? For the passing moment, I'll
Oh, chill. You guys like getting dressed up as animals.
remove any personal connection to the story. I don't want my own personal experience as a furry to cloud my judgment. For
Impossible to avoid. He says, blapping his PingTuber avatar furry onto the screen.
now, I'll employ past studies. This local thesis by the University of Waikato takes an exploratory analysis of the suicidality, anxiety, and depression amongst furry populations. It has a sample population consisting of 1,249 self-identified furries. Thus, I believe I'm borrowing from an adequately sized sample population. The topical focus centers around the Maya minority model of stress, whereby the mental health of a minority group is defined by key factors of risk and protective processes, something which has gone seldom addressed in previous and even future studies. For this thesis was published back in 2018. Mental health is a historically under-addressed topic, and that theme is all too present in furry culture.
Are you not gonna reference
That is
anything?
apparent
Okay,
when considering the overall lack of studies and action of prevention despite decades of known issues. The Maya minority model
When people discuss the idea of scientism and shit on it, this is ooh.
of stress, or as I will call it for the rest of the video, the Maya model, targets stresses such as isolation, rejection, concealment of identity, stigma, and other processes which inhibit one's ability to exude happiness. All of these processes combined create the total risk towards a particular group. That is then compared to any protective factors such as a sense of community and support.
For anyone who watched when we were looking through videos about whether or not a furry should come out, whether or not it's something they can do, so on and so forth, I guess it appears, maybe this would be worth looking into at some point, but it appears work is being done to, within academia at least, create a body of work that categorizes being furry as an intrinsic personality element. The yes, come out as furry side is winning in the halls of academia. Amazing.
Support group, or any processes that counteract any apparent risk factors. It should be noted that this method doesn't recognize much individuality. Access to support is one example. It shouldn't be said that all furries are treated equally, as all furries have distinct social environments.
Yeah, same as any other person. Why are you... Yeah, of course. They're looking at you as a group, though, brother.
A furry living in one area may have access to the support group whilst another furry may not. With that out of the way, we can analyze the first factor, risk. Just one example of risk would be assault or public harassment. Say for example being verbally assaulted on the street or even stoned on the street, which can cause...
Risk factor, furry stoning. Maybe one day live in a society in which furries are stoned. Are they really at risk, though, of being stoned? Because, look, I've seen those fursuit heads. They're huge. There's a ton of space. Even a big stone is probably not going to make it to their head. Even a big stone dropped off a building onto them, it's not going to reach... Just get some steel reinforcement in your helmet.
Paranoia. Paranoia to walk the same street again, in the same clothes, towards the similar people. This can be interpreted as
paranoia to wear my giant blue fennec fox suit towards the same people.
As almost internalized stigma. You have experienced a form of risk and internalized your view on
expirance risk.
Safety and your place in society. Mass examples could be bomb threats and marches outside furry conventions, which is a place supposed to resemble community and safety. Take for example the 24.
It's a place supposed to resemble community. The way he speaks is so alien, I'm starting to suspect AI was involved in this script.
14 Midwest Furfest gas attacks. This purposeful chlorine gas leak led to the hospitalization of 19 furries. No one is presently certain on the exact culprit of this attack, although a few theories have surfaced on who may be responsible. Either way, for an event like this to occur, it proves at least someone is uncaring on the general safety of furries as they collect.
It proves at least someone is generally uncaring on the general safety of furries. So?
Meet at one of the largest conventions. Thus, paranoia can instill itself into anxiety on further attendance for attacks or threats towards public safety. In a very famous clip sporting over 6 million views on YouTube, reported
are all human beings a minority because there have been random shootings that they could be victims of and now can become paranoid about going to the shopping center over?
Mika Brzezinski for MSNBC's weekday morning broadcast struggles to understand the concept of furries after reporting on the MFF gas leak, essentially turning the event into a comedy, which under most...
Dog, sucks that you were gassed, but a bunch of people in ridiculous suits is funny. Furries being gassed is funny. It's also bad that it was done. As much as I'll joke about stuff like this, I don't believe in gassing human beings at a convention. It's still funny though.
Those circumstances would be funny. However, the irony is not lost when one reporter is directly telling the camera the police are treating the event as a criminal investigation, whilst the other two are laughing and treating the situation as a joke. As host Joe Scarborough says, she just learned something we all wish we didn't know. One can picture the effects on furries when confronted with an apparent purposeful gas attack in a comedic level event by famous reporters on live television.
Okay, but haven't you heard of stories of people doing weird sex shit and you laugh about it? Mr. Hands was torn open by a horsecock and died. Funny. But a man died. But also funny. Do you understand?
Only to be told that they wish they had never learned of furries, which calls to another aspect of risk.
Just because you get hurt, or the group you're part of gets hurt, or someone hates you, doesn't mean everyone then has to like you to counterbalance that. No. You can condemn the act of violence while hating or laughing at the group it was done towards. Why not?
Isolation. When general populations are unwilling to even consider furries or provide any trace amount of sympathy, not being recognized can exhibit isolation and ostracization. According to First Science,
not being recognized can exhibit isolation. He doesn't know how to use words.
Ostracism is a fairly common experience, which is then compounded upon by the failure
From what I've seen of furries, I would not be surprised if the ostracism comes not from, letting people know you're a furry, saying I'm a furry, and more down to how many furries act and behave. The attitude of being a furry being something you come out about, needing everyone to know. That's really weird and annoying. Same way as if you're like really into Final Fantasy and you need to tell everyone and they need to know. Really annoying. You might find yourself ostracized.
To recognize furries as a general subgroup of human beings and the problems that they face. This isolation
My man out here calling furries subhuman. Nice. He didn't. I'm just being silly.
Furries is a general human experience, which is then compounded upon by the failure to recognize furries as a general subgroup of human beings in the
failure to recognize furries as a subgroup of human beings? By who? Who isn't recognizing them as human beings? It's cringe and weird because you are a person doing this stuff. Like, what do you mean?
Problems that they face. This isolation can lead to a form of concealment, to hide one's identity in a bid to avoid such ostracism or isolation.
So, hide that you like anthropomorphic animals or not. Ah! No, we need furry marriage. I need to be able to marry my dog, because what if my dog's in hospital and they only let next of kin who are married or blood related in?
Refusal to disclose the furry side of yourself to peers, family, or even loved ones. Participants in the Waikato study only reported comfort in disclosing their furriness to non-furry friends 71.8% of the time.
That's really high. That's much higher than I expected.
7.6% feel somewhat comfortable disclosing this information to loved ones, and 51.5% for family, 36% for non-furry work colleagues, and 25%
25% of furries polled for this study or whatever felt comfortable telling their boss? Why would you?
For non-furry bosses and supervisors. Internalizing this is an example of a mental stressor, incidentally opening
only if you have an urge to tell people you're a furry, but why would you? Why is telling people something you need to do? How does that affect you to conceal? What if you're a Mario speedrunner? Do you need to tell people?
Up about this furry trait can cause significant damage in perceived social status, and in certain environments opens one up to the possibility of bullying. Exactly how prevalent this problem.
So far, you're less paralleling it to be minority status and more just, yeah, it's like any other nerd shit, but worse because of the things people have heard about furries. I guess you could extend this and just instead say it parallels all nerd shit to minority groups, but silly.
Is, for lack of a better term, grim. There is significantly higher rates of bullying amongst furries than general populations. First,
amongst? The phrasing here is very strange because it makes it sound like furries bully each other more than the general population bullies each other. Shouldn't you say the rate at which people are victimized by bullying is higher amongst furries? Or something like that. I presume that's what he means. But maybe he means what he said.
Science claims that 61.7% of furries reported being bullied from the ages of 11 to 18. Waikato saw a decrease to 50.4% of furries surveyed experiencing some form of bullying. Normal populations provide a range of estimates anywhere from between 19 to 30 plus, but typically estimates I found fall somewhere along the line of 20 to 20.
Were the furries? Important info. Did they become... So, okay, Volium says 11-year-old furries, what? Is the bullying being reported occurring before or after they're bullies? Sorry, before or after they're furries?
5% of general students experiencing bullying. This means statistically the rate in which furries experience some form of bullying is 2 to 3 times higher than the expected level. Worse more, the frequency and severity of this bullying is also distinctly increased. Waikato suggests that 16.5% report being physically bullied a great deal.
It'd be interesting. Would be really, really, really interesting. Are they bullied by people who know they're furries, or are they the kind of person who gets bullied more? And they're a furry. You get what I'm saying? That isn't being laid out by this guy. I don't know if it's even included in this study. But that would be very important for me to know.
Whilst typical students fall somewhere at about 6%. It's important to make a distinction between general bullying and specifically targeting the furry community.
Yes.
Thankfully, the Waikato study also makes this distinction.
Okay.
37.9% reported being harassed specifically about being a furry, and
Right, the more relevant number. Okay.
10.1% reported being harassed a great deal. From these statistics,
Over being a furry. So these people are heavily bullied aside from their furriness, is what we can take from these numbers. From that, you could theorize they're not necessarily bullied for being a furry. They're a bullyable person who is also a furry, so the bullies target their furriness.
we've created a game of cat and mouse, whereby not opening up creates internalized anguish and isolation.
That's extreme mental illness. Not opening up about liking to dress up as an animal, or looking at animal people and jerking off. not opening up to people about that causing you anguish, you're diseased.
Opening up results in physical endangerment. Systematically, furries haven't yet established their presence in order to sustain a notable quantity of systematic oppression, largely in
Systemic oppression, brother. Systemic. But
opening up results in physical endangerment. Systematically, furries haven't yet established their presence in order
I think furries do try to systematically establish their presence. But that's not what you're trying to say. You're saying something... I know that's not what you're trying to say. You're not saying that they're enacting methods of establishing their presence. You're saying within the system, which I presume you mean all of society, they don't have enough of a presence.
To sustain a notable quantity of systematic oppression, largely in referencing politicians and policies that affect furries either directly or collaterally.
My man is saying they're not noticed enough to be legislated against.
Examine a politician who made a direct point in her distaste for furries, the all-too-infamous name Candace Taylor. In the afternoon of May 14th, 2022, in the city of Buffalo, New York, shooter Peyton Gendron would fire upon a crowded supermarket in a predominantly black neighborhood, injuring 3 people and fatally wounding 10. The target was African Americans. Gendron was a self-described white supremacist and held many neo-Nazi opinions. The shooting was a tragic story and yet another instance of black discrimination on the streets of America. In the days following the shooting,
oh, is this a furry?
Republican candidate Candace Taylor would call attention to the furry art displayed on the shooter's phone, which can be seen.
Oh god, bro! Your example of oppression against furries is because a politician pointed out that a mass shooter of black people had furry art on their phone? Because this lady suggested that there's a connection between furriness and being deranged? Your example of oppression of furries is someone talking about a mass shooter like in furry stuff? That's an L. This is a gigantic L. Look at how we're treated just because some of us mass murder black people. Is not effective rhetoric.
During a live stream the shooter held. With this information, Candace would assert that it was not for white supremacy that caused this shooting, but mental.
It's not in that quote. Nowhere in this quote, nowhere in this does she say it's not. She doesn't say white supremacy isn't a motive. Unless he has another quote.
Ill furries. Alt-right personality and ex-rapper.
Why can't it be both? Why not both? Turns out that Buffalo shooter yesterday was a furry. In my list of executive orders, I explicitly addressed and received blowback. Blowblacks is messing with me, that YouTuber guy. For tackling the perversions of the furry culture, twisting the minds of Generation Z must end. She doesn't say there's no racism. Maybe she has somewhere else.
That caused this shooting, but mentally ill furries. Alt-right personality.
Why not a mentally ill white supremacist furry? Why is that not an option?
An ex-rapper and bounty hunter, Stuart Peters, would tag onto this debacle stating, "A gun didn't do it, a white supremacist didn't do it, a sick and demented furry did it. When Candace Taylor is elected governor, Georgia will be furry-free." Furthermore,
right, so some other guy. Who is he?
Right personality and ex-rapper and bounty hunter, Stuart Peters, would tag onto this debacle.
Never heard of him in my life. Ex-rapper. You're trying to outline systemic discrimination against furries. You got a politician, okay. Now you have ex-bounty hunter and rapper?
Stating, "A gun didn't do it, a white supremacist didn't do it, a sick and demented furry did it. When Candace Taylor is elected governor, Georgia will be furry-free." Furthermore, in the run-up to her campaign, she would tweet an extremely powerful and motivating tweet that's really personal to me. I quoted in the Mirror every morning, "The furry days are over when I'm governor. Public school is for academics, not fairy tales." That last excerpt on public schools stems from a compounding series of rumors in the last few years, claiming that schools have been accommodating the needs of furries.
Now, I know that I said previously that
Should they, though? What are the... Okay. He's probably referring to the viral stories that are like, girl who identifies as cat given litter box in school. My man in this video, having mentioned the idea of furry accommodation in schools, are you going to say, that's ridiculous because furries don't need any kind of accommodation in school? What are you talking about? Or is he going to not mention it? Or is he going to... There's no way he'll go further and say, yes, we have special needs. Yes, we need furry accommodation in schools. He's not doing that, is he?
I was going to remove any personal connection to these stories. But I actually have a fairly interesting account of some of these rumors. My mother is a marketing consultant, so therefore she meets and converses with a lot of people over our area as a marketing tactic, but also because my mother has a heart of gold. Sometimes she will attempt to get to know her clients fairly well as people. And despite never bringing up furries and her job having nothing to do with public schooling, on multiple occasions by people who probably have a brain, have brought up to my mother if she's heard about the kitty litter box in schools. Apparently that rumor must be going around again. I thought we snuffed that one out years ago, but no. This is just a repeating instance that pops up in conversation with some people here. Every time my mum comes home and she's like, I heard that one rumor about the kitty litter box again, and it's so fucking funny. And that rumor made itself into politics as well. Just listen to Republican State Senator Bruce Boss.
Right, where'd it come from? Are you gonna take it down, do a quick takedown? You spent 5 minutes rambling about the Holocaust. You can do 1 minute on why that litter box thing is nonsense and what it is, I think.
Musselman explain it for me.
I'm a little shocked, I guess is what I would put it. It's called something called furries. If you don't know what furries are, it's where school children dress up as animals, cats or dogs, during the school day. They meow and they bark, and they interact with their school, with the teachers and that in this fashion. And now schools are wanting to put litter boxes in the schools for these children to use. How is this sanitary?
Humor and comedy aside, calling a spade, this is misinformation. Obviously, it is misinformation out of the mouths of politicians. But
the government is slandering us! This is misinformation. Please, Mark Zuckerberg, shut it down.
It's also calling to attack an environment of a school that is largely supposed to be a safe space for children.
Hold up.
Calling to attack an environment of a school that is...
It's calling to attack an environment of a school. What legislation or action would come out of what he said? A litter box ban? No litter boxes in school for students. What is the legislation? You gotta tell us. What is he calling for? Okay, say everything he's saying is total bullshit. It's wrong. Obviously that definition of furry doesn't encompass all furries. Maybe that rumor about the litter box thing isn't true, whatever. What are you scared of being put into effect?
Is largely supposed to be a safe space for children. A safe space where they should have the freedom to education without fear of discrimination.
It sounds like this guy is going, it's not real, but if it was, he shouldn't discriminate against them? What is the direction this is going in?
Misinformation can be so plentiful that it can occur in our politicians. What does that...
Misinformation can occur in our politicians. Politicians can, like, develop misinformationitis. Guys, I think politicians might lie. Or say things that are wrong. We need to do something about this. And I like the idea that politicians spreading misinformation is a result of that misinformation's commonness.
That mean for the general public and schooling?
Thus asks a general question on misinformation about furries. Where did it come from? Why does it happen? What is furry hate? Why would this community...
You're not going to explain the litter box thing. And you're not going to fully explain what you mean by saying the children should be safe from discrimination. Your response to a guy saying, there are these kids that dress up like animals and they want to shit in a box in the classroom, that's unsanitary. Your response is, this guy wants to put restrictions on schools that would make children feel discriminated against. In what way? Not being allowed litter boxes? What do you mean? You have to... spend 5 minutes talking about the Holocaust on a furry video, dog. You can explain exactly what you mean right there.
In particular get hate, but others are spared. We can look at furries today and identify many sources of misinformation and negative stereotypes about furries. But there has to be a point of origin or initial motivation for why these attacks happen. The answer may just be with the creation and the formation of the fandom itself.
The first ideas of this fandom were conceived...
Is this furry genesis? Is this a religious document?
During the late 1970s, coming out of a small offshoot from the underground comic and science fiction scene. Back then, diverse cultural animations such as anime were existent, but
Kurogane no Shiro. Whatever, it's fine.
Far less abundant than what we know today. You couldn't simply Google your favorite anime. I mean, you couldn't Google anything at all. With this need to fill a gap in the Western market, people began trading for these Japanese animations on tape. Then people started to realize, hey, we're really forming our own thing here. So a group of about 5 guys, notably Mark Merlino and Fred Patton, decided to form the cartoon/fantasy organization.
That's really creepy.
5 guys, notably Mark Merlino and Fred Patton, decided to form the
I don't like that little clip. That is nightmare clip.
cartoon/fantasy organization. Here, they could watch these animations in a small group. Animations which often shared a common motif of these anthropomorphic animals. Like a domino being placed, time had these animals gain their popularity. There was a desire to step away from the conventional superhero versus bad guy tropes, and an industry of funny animals was born. Anthro animals in settings which were natural human aesthetics. In time, they began to form a sort of community of their own. It expanded into animals not just standing up from time to time like Wile E. Coyote, but animals representing people, drinking, dating, working. They were pilots in spaceships.
Right, how did this become something that's part of people's identities that they feel the need to share, and if it's suppressed it causes them mental anguish? You're making it sound, you're still presenting it as like a disease that needs to be cured.
They were gangsters. They were just like people. A real modern use of anthro animals as a stand-in for human expression. Discussions were being made. New people were coming in and expressing gratitude for the art, showing their own works and the funny animals that they had made. Something had clicked here. Like magic, people were turning to this media and turning fast, eventually overcrowding the comic book, the science fiction, and the anime conventions. Funny animal enthusiasts needed to be moved to their own rooms and parties, which eventually got the colloquial term furry party. We were not only born from a space that was very geeky and weird, we were born into a space that was very queer. The expression that this
Right, sure, tie it on to sexuality. That's gonna benefit you, I'm sure. Furries are never beating the paraphilia accusations. Ever. Ever.
promoted paralleled the expression of people's true selves, a tradition which stands up all these decades later. Each time this fandom progressed and took shape, the ideas and the formation of the founders, the offshoots from conventions to organizations to parties, they were always small groups of a slightly
Is that the furry version of a black sun?
less smaller group. Furries in this era I find to suffer more as a sub-minority. The term sub-minority may not be very popular, but its etymology is fairly straightforward. It is a minority.
That's not magic. Does he believe in, what's the kind of magic that deals with true names and the meaning of words? Just because you can explain a prefix doesn't mean the word has meaningful descriptive power that you have to respect. Right? And act on. And accept. Onomancy might be it.
Minority group that makes up a larger minority. The struggles of queer identity and expression, the homophobia that plagues the world.
When I typed in the chat at the start of the stream, LGBTF, I was joking. LGBTQ, furries being a subgroup of Q. Dog. No.
Today
Don't. You better not do it. You better not do it.
Definitely plagued the world back then, all branched over into furries. Our problems and the way that society viewed us were a queer problem, regardless of all the people in the minority.
Furries are a queer problem. Not my words, I disavow. I'm repeating the video.
Were queer or not. The apple doesn't fall far from the homophobic tree when it comes to initial furry hate. Looking at
Stop. That's a lie by omission. If tagging British cigarette onto the end of a word means the group it refers to is being targeted for hate and therefore counts as falling under queer and is a sub-minority, literally every variation of person can be called as something F and R regularly.
how furries are discriminated, there is a strong theme of sexual deviancy, and this can be tied back to homophobia and transphobia, the idea that gay and LGBT are not but sexual deviants who sinned against God.
Regardless of what you think of homosexuality, I think animal stuff is different. Okay?
This has led into effects that we even see today, such as LGBT people having a perceived threat to children. Furries
Weebs are also a problem. I'm sorry, but it's true. I'll come for you next.
too share a similar
I'm learning Japanese on Duolingo to go to Japan and destroy anime at its source. Forever.
Fate. This news broadcast from 2007 on WAFB Channel 9 begins with an especially egregious opening.
Respect these people! Dude, if you just show people a ton of pictures of furries, they'll hate them. You don't need to say anything.
Line.
They are furry and perhaps up to no good. Might want to watch your children around these characters.
This theme continues throughout the broadcast.
Yeah. Should I not watch my children around people wearing weird animal suits, probably doing sex stuff? This is ridiculous. You should give furries your children. What's the counterpoint?
With insinuations so disgusting that I'm surprised there isn't a defamation lawsuit. Such sentiments were shared across broadcasting channels to varying degrees. Few could be even slightly interpreted as positive,
Suing who? What, class action defamation lawsuit by furries in general? Shut up.
Seeds for further discrimination to come. Another common theme in this perpetual furry hate war was identity, to insinuate that all furries had a universal belief that they were the animal of their persona. This is made out in a similar sense to those attack.
I like how what was playing in the background was a couple of people talking about how it's tied into their sex life.
Helicopter jokes on trans people, and there's a particular conflation between Furians and furries. Furians
Wait, but they do exist?
Being a separate subculture of society that internally, for reasons either psychological or spiritual, identify with a species that is not human. This can be as a result of identity or even religion. For example, shamanism, although there are other cases. The conflation between groups of furries and
Oh no. Is there no relation whatsoever?
Furians are plentiful and ongoing, particularly in media, resulting in confusion and stigma.
Wait, but is it okay to discriminate against the Therians?
Occasionally this confusion is made purposeful. People less understanding of a given group are less likely to support it, so people
understanding of a group. Understanding means something more than merely understanding what the group is. Understanding of a group. Is this him sucking at English and meaning to say people less knowledgeable about a group? Or does he really mean if you're less understanding of it, you're less likely to support it? Obviously, because to be understanding of it means you can see where they're coming from.
Antagonistic to a group will want to accentuate such confusion.
Each example of discrimination is why many would class furries.
So far, dog, you're implying that it would be okay to discriminate if that confusion wasn't there. Or discriminate against Therians. Which is going to be hard to, like, say why that's okay, but it's not okay towards furries. I think this needs to be tackled specifically.
As a sub-minority group, a contingent minority to the LGBT, which is true and stands correct today. Confusion. Each example of discrimination is why many would class furries as a sub-minority group, a contingent minority to the LGBT, which is true and stands.
Furries fall under LGBT, specifically under the Q.
Is correct today. The majority of the furry population identifies under LGBT, thus transphobia and homophobia are presented towards.
That's not how it works. If everyone who's into a hobby is gay, that doesn't make the identity of being into that hobby a minority group. Or those who identify as that hobby a minority group, insofar as they are members of that hobby or people who engage in that hobby. If everyone who rides bikes is gay, that doesn't mean cyclists are a minority group. That means cycling is a hobby done exclusively by members of a minority group. It doesn't make cycling itself.
Furries as well. Although
if you like rap, you're black, that's how it works. You also have to vote for Joe Biden as well, though.
This has some flaws. Furries have this rare characteristic that pushes the boundaries of sub-minority. Let me explain. If all furry hate consisted of just homophobia, it would make it very hard for LGBT individuals to be anti-furries or present homophobia within the fandom. Many fans of this channel will know by now that homophobic furries do exist.
This is just... The perspective is so cooked. It's argument after argument after argument, stack after stack after stack, going more and more wild in perspective.
So
once you get to this point, you should stop, chill, take a few minutes. Is it really like this, or have I messed up horribly? Can I really just explain away every problem my thesis runs into? Or perhaps there's a weak foundation.
there are likely more forces at play here. Why do furries experience hate to the extent in which they do? Undoubtedly, the most important and abundant factor would be homophobia. I can't ignore our roots. A large proportion of hate...
Can't ignore our roots. What if no one who hates you even knows your roots? It's not magic. You don't transmit it out to people. Even if your telling of the history is accurate, that doesn't mean people who find you creepy or weird or don't want to hear about you hate you because you came out of queer spaces and are gay. Probably don't even know. If someone doesn't know that, how can they... If someone doesn't know you're gay, how can they discriminate against you for being gay? If someone doesn't know furries consider themselves to be queer, or even consider you queer, how can they discriminate you against you for that?
It comes with the territory of a sub-minority group, as can be identified through old sources of media. What distinguishes furry from the LGBT community is in large part due to social media. Here,
you argued you're a sub-minority of queer, so you're not distinguished from the group. You fall under them. If you wanna... You think furries will be familiar with taxonomy. As a subgroup, you're still contained. Or if you think about it like a folder on your computer, you're saying there's LGBT, and inside that folder there's separate LGBT and Q. And inside of the Q folder is you. You're still within the LGBT, is what you just were saying.
furry hate has morphed into its own form of discrimination, like a mutation of homophobia in a sense. You can connect the dots back from furry hate to...
What if they just think it's f***ing weird and your costumes look really creepy? Many people do.
Ties, but they are distinct just enough where both groups can target each other, homophobic furries or anti-furry LGBT. What stands out to me the most is zoophilia. Something you'll notice is that...
That's a good clip. What stands out to me the most is zoophilia.
In older television and recorded history, most claims typically sway towards harm to children and sexual deviancy. There's little...
It's so creepy. It's so creepy, just at face value.
Mention of actual animals or any harm towards them. That rhetoric is more of a recent phenomenon, or at least it saw a considerable rise in the internet age. That is...
Why did it see a rise, Clubbedseal? Do you have any examples for this?
Just one example.
Or would you prefer not to include it?
That separates furry stigma from homophobia. Why might this be? What drove this shift towards zoophilia and newer forms of anti-furry rhetoric? Well, nowadays social media can easily push people down rabbit holes of misinformation. Think Pizzagate in 2016 or YouTube Shorts and Andrew Tate. Alt-right rabbit holes which can very easily suck people in with progressively more dangerous information. Dangerous information that is both parts more graphic and fictitious. Zoophilia is
I can't show many of these videos as they are literally too graphic. Not a good sign.
The present target of this, and is largely capitalized on by YouTube and clickbait. Apophenia is a form of cognitive bias whereby a connection is formed between two mostly unrelated things. Stereotyping is a common example of this. The perception that one bad person must imply a connection between the rest of the group. If a furry is represented by their worst attributes or a community is represented by the worst of its people, then there must be a connection there. Rather than chalking up furries like Lucky Coyote or Kira the Wolf to mere coincidence, rare cases amongst literal millions of people, it is fine.
Do we even go into it? Many issues. People don't just see these two individuals. They also see other elements. In the same way that you've gone, oh, furries came from a queer space, so they're imbued with queerness. People see many examples. They see furry spaces with weird stuff going on. They see the flavor there, and they see the most extreme examples too. And that all comes together to go, oh, the flavor of furriness is this freak shit. In the same way that you went, the flavor of furriness is queerness.
A correlation where there is none. In a YouTube sphere which constantly regurgitates the same stories and notions, repeated exposure serves to strengthen this effect. The solution would be to break the chain. Rather than simply regurgitating the story, I would encourage all creators to include the lead-on effects into the fandom. A brief summary on how these stories don't represent furries as a whole, and to cease rhetoric on how furry...
Right, but what does? You're talking about having a shared root that somehow has stained all of furrydom magically, even if people aren't aware of the origins, whether you're right or not.
Furry is an inherently wrong community. That is discrimination and untruthful storytelling of events. If you're gonna call yourself
Untrue, false storytelling of events, I'm serious. I'm not joking. This ain't no joke.
a video essayist, I expect the full story, not a perverted version for you to conform to your bigoted audience. Unfortunately, I don't yet have a study to confirm whether exposure of the fandom and its
Don't be biased! Unfortunately, I don't yet have a study to confirm my preconceived notions, but I'll be hunting for one and possibly even funding. Are you for real?
popularity have led to more negative stereotypes. I cannot say without some doubt that furries are more or less negatively received. According to Fur Science, the vast majority of furries do believe that furry hate has decreased in the last 5 years. However, need I remind you that these studies often have to have adults answer the surveys for them. Surveying minors is strictly controlled and oftentimes infeasible.
And as furries, I'd love to have easier access to children.
Therefore, a substantial population of the world to those susceptible to the media's attacks, the bullying in school and the places which of the world to those
in truth, it lay hypothesis of many furries that they were indeed picked on more as children. Says source Fur Science. That would be my guess, yeah. I think it also suggests this hypothesis, should it be tested and found to stand up, would counter much of the idea of furry discrimination, rather suggesting that there's this bullyable, hyper-bullyable demographic of people who tend to become furries, resulting in furries being a group that's bullied. Right? How am I today? Pretty terrible, but it's fine. I'm just not going to talk about it. People asking about glasses. I have like eye or stress problems that make it very hard to use computers. That's why I don't do games anymore. As of like a couple weeks ago, it's getting worse and worse. Just doing everything I can to protect my eyes. Anyway.
Susceptible to the media's attacks, the bullying in school and the places which we would see furry hate the most, they do not have a say in these forms of studies. And so too does the framing of the question. More favourable does not mean less negative.
As an extreme example,
it can or cannot, depending on exactly how it's done. What were they asked? Is it more favourable than 5 years ago, or more negative? I think it's pretty obvious that you're meant to interpret these as opposites, and therefore by answering one you're saying it is not the other, if that's how it's asked.
Do believe that furry hate has decreased in the last 5 years. However, need I remind you that these studies often have hate has decreased in the last 5 years. However, need I...
So he's interpreted them saying fandom's reputation is more favourable than 5 years ago regarding how the public sees them in media coverage. And he said that means...
majority of furries do believe that furry hate has decreased in the...
He said that means hate has decreased. And then later he says that is not synonymous with a decrease in negativity. Yes? Hang on.
And right? So too does the framing of the question. More favourable does not mean less negative.
But you just took the more favourable coverage to mean there's less furry hate, or the more favourable perspective of the public and more favourable coverage. You yourself, brother, equated that to less hate. Are you going to say that means there's less hate, but it's not less negative? Ridiculous.
As an extreme example, say in population 1, we have 10 broadcasts from the year 2010. Each of these broadcasts are in some way negative. In the second population of modern broadcasts, we would see more, let's say 100 broadcasts. This is to mimic the population increase of furries and in turn the attention to the fandom. 10 of these 100 broadcasts are positive whilst 90 are negative. Take the averages and we have a better ratio of broadcasts in the second population, however a substantially higher number of negative broadcasts. In the real
Clubbedseal. Furries' perception of how the public sees / media coverage of the fandom. It's not even just about media coverage. His commentary is meaningless because the question asks about general public perception alongside media coverage. Oh my... Forget the dissection of proportion. My man doesn't even understand what's being shown and what's being asked. Those furries weren't being asked, how many negative pieces of media did you count? That's not how this is done. So his analogy is meaningless as well. Even in his own terms, it's meaningless.
Would perceive less furry hate than a child in high school today who is surrounded by kids raised on YouTube shorts. Thus, your perception of how furry hate is developed is monumentally influenced by your age, your consumed media, and your past experiences.
Yes, all that poll from Furry Science asked is people's perception of others' perception in broadcasts.
No matter which way you cut this cake, furry hate is an apparent issue. And compounding all of
No, it's not. No, it's fine.
these stresses, we finally have an estimated risk factor for furries, of which paints a very grim picture of furry.
Of which paints? No. All of which, you could say. All of which paints, not of which. Or you could just say, which paints.
Furries and mental health. Returning to the Waikato study another time, we have an inference
I can't argue. I can't argue with that.
on the effect that these risk factors have. I heed caution for viewers who may have trouble with topics such as depression and suicide. In this section of the video, I will read the core studies of this paper, which for some viewers...
I love the phrasing of a warning like that. No, I have no problem with suicide. Suicide fucking rules! It's not just if you have... Yeah, I have a problem with suicide, but not in the way that this is about.
may be disturbing. It was found that 38.4% of participants had attempted suicide once in their lifetime, with 23.5% attempting at least twice. It was
Self-report? I do not believe... Yo, Nicandros, good shout. My man didn't do a trigger warning for the Holocaust, as far as I can remember. Furry Holocaust? Everyone loves it. Fun for all the family. Furries cutting themselves with safety scissors? Careful, you might need to leave.
also found that 31.3% of participants had contemplated suicide in the past year. 46.7% of participants scored in the clinical range for anxiety, whilst 41.3% in the clinical range for depression, with 20...
There's correlation, but you also showed us a clearly biased towards your side source, right? Furry Science suggests that the kind of people who become furries are the people who are bullied to begin with, prior to their involvement in furry fandom, right? This makes the idea that this is just the effect of furry hate less strong. It undermines it. Because what if population that become furries are the people who, if furry fandom didn't exist, will be predisposed towards this anyway, and will be targeted because of how they behave in other ways? Which is a painting you've started to paint.
7.5 and 18.4 in the severe range respectively. This should not be the norm. This is not okay. I would like to include that this is...
Holocaust was 100 years ago. We can still do another one. It's not a suggestion. What I mean is, like, do you really think there are people who are not triggered by the Holocaust? If you're a person who puts trigger warnings in, do you think the Holocaust is one to not warn about?
After considering any support factors that furries may have, anything that could have prevented such high of a result. More so, it is incredibly...
Oh, is there a warning? I remember him just dropping it. Yeah, he does do a Holocaust jump scare. Holocaust jump scare. Now that's a band name.
Disturbing to acknowledge the preventability of these results. The severe amount of people, human beings, whose lives...
2725. So, furries thinking about killing themselves. To hear about that, you need a warning. How about...
The Holocaust, which I'm now realizing I'm...
Holocaust jump scare? Let's go. Furries contemplating suicide might be too scary. Leave before I talk about it.
Human beings whose...
I feel like it paints a picture.
lives could have been saved, changed, or improved simply by avoiding such discrimination.
Would their lives not have been improved if they were never exposed to weird f***ing people in animal suits? Because if it is furry hate, what if they just never encountered weird f***ing people in animal suits? Would their life also be better then?
Estimates do range on the exact number of furries in the world, and none are really well sourced either.
A commonly sourced estimate by a number of publications is 1.4 to 2.8 million. However, this number is based on a Fursecution...
Can I just see that? International Anthropomorphic Research Project, furscience.com. Hold up. How many furries exist in the world? 2.8. There are now around 1.4 to 2.8 million furries worldwide, according to the Healthy Journal. The furry community is a very kind and accepting community overall. Many furries are LGBTQ+. Many have autism, ADHD, and other disorders. Because of this, furries make their hobby accessible to all of those who join. Is that an AI gen, like AI gen scrape auto definition?
Number is based on a Fur Science study asking furries how many they think exists. It is impossibly hard.
He's heavily implying, at the very least, Robomate, that these supposed facts about furry self-harm, suicide, suicidal ideation, anxiety, are the result of furry hate. Having already said and quoted this furry science place regarding the idea that many of them are strange people who would be bullied anyway, and were bullied anyway.
Hard to predict accurate numbers, especially considering the subjectivity of the term furry. Let's play with the rounded number of 2 million, as that makes for a reasonable amount of sense in my eyes. In 2015, one of the largest furry
It makes for an amount of... The 2 million number just makes sense.
art sites for Affinity reported having 1.2 million active users. As one of the only furries in my entire friend group to even have an inactive account on there, I can say with certainty 1.2 million does not account for the entire population. Add on to that, in recent times, the only furries in my entire friend group to even have an inactive account on there, I can say with certainty 1.2 million does not account for the entire population. Add on to that, in recent times, Fur Affinity has largely fallen out of favor with general audiences. This comes after obscure moderation choices.
Does every account equal one individual? Like CircleLurk says, if you don't have to pay for the account, there are bots.
And poor ethical guidelines. Moreover, 8 years has been given for this number to increase. To put that in perspective, Midwest Fur Fest has gone from 5,606 attendees in 2015 to over 15,000 in 2023. By all accounts, 2 million is likely underestimating the real statistic. I would personally place the fandom at over 5 million, however many may
How? What's your methodology? Just a guess?
class such a figure as generous. So for those skeptics out there, we will have to meet at the middle.
You could do a Holocaust edit of this. Bro, why did you have to say 5 million? I'd say 5 million, but most of my friends think that's way too generous.
At 2 million. That would equate to 768,000 furries having contemplated suicide in the last year. According to Save.org, roughly 1 in 25 of these suicide attempts were successful. That equates to 30,720 lives. Whether that number is accurate or at all close to realistic, I cannot say. What I can
But you still said it! I don't think this shit works like that, brother.
say is that there is an issue that does not come without consequence, and a drastic consequence that is. An estimated over 700,000 people die from suicide each year, roughly 3 since I've started this video. 30,000 over the
Rest in peace, audience members who couldn't make it all the way through. I'm sorry I showed you this. It's
course of decades does not seem implausible, however grim that might sound. It may even be more. Of those 38.4% of participants that attempted suicide in their lifetime, 23.5% had tried again, increasing the likelihood of successful attempts. Arguably, the darkest part is
that a self-report of suicide attempts, though? I'd need to know, are the stats on people who've attempted dying or thought about it dying or whatever it was, are those attempts based off, record of them receiving medical attention, for example? Or is that self-report? And is this for science one or whatever it's from self-report? He just doesn't include so many important elements.
Who couldn't answer this survey. Those who succeeded in their attempts. This data only...
Damn, there could be infinite furries committing suicide who didn't respond to the survey. The most important information you can always get from a survey is, damn, whatever this survey says, it's also likely to be infinite more. Surveys exist for you to just say, Oh, that's so bad, but consider all the people who didn't respond to the survey. That's what it's about. That's what you use them for. Every time. Nice. Very good.
It counts for those alive to answer. Those who weren't successful. When I'm asked why I care so much about this fandom,
I'd suggest that you shouldn't describe furries who've killed themselves, who've managed to go all the way through, resulting in their own death, as successful.
I often answer with, how are you content? I don't come here to simply comment.
What?
And answer with,
Wait.
why I care so much about this fandom. I often answer with, how are you content? I don't come here to simply commentate on furries and I leave. I wake up with the day staring me down. A world so often unresponsive and indifferent to my struggles.
As a furry! Yeah, the world doesn't give a fuck. Overwhelmingly, people don't know what you are.
Today, that issue is often placed upon me, and it just so happens that thousands of people cannot cope with that burden. That's how I know that there is something to cherish. What is furry hate?
If you kill yourself over your hobby of liking animals that stand on two legs and dressing up in a suit, no matter how unreasonable the people who hate your hobby are, you are still absolutely fucked up. Beyond receiving hatred regarding something you like, there is something really, really, really fucked up with you.
This is furry hate. This percentage, these lives. Bigotry can stab a person in the heart. Being a furry just rubs salt into the wound.
Sorry. Furries are the most hurt victims. Bigotry's bad, but it's always worse if you're a furry. Bigotry can stab you in the heart, but being a furry rubs salt into the wound. Furries are the biggest victims in the world.
Bigotry can stab a person in the heart. Being a furry just rubs salt into the wound. I would hesitate calling furries a sub-minority of queer culture. They share similarities, but they are distinct in many ways. Calling them identical would be ignoring any other factors that make furries distinct. So far we've investigated where furry hate comes from, the forms in which discrimination shows, and the effects on the mental health of furries. We have identified that the problem exists further than just a simple definition of sub-minority. So before we consider more extreme labels and progress any further, we should ask one if
you haven't really examined all that much. You've just scrambled in a spaghetti of nonsense. Just a mess. Just a mess.
Fundamental.
You believe in the magical power of words. Everyone suddenly forgets the word furry. No label replaces it. Do furries still exist? Yes. There you go. Have I just blown your mind? A rose by any other name, brother.
Question. Why even put a label to the fandom in the first place? We understand furry hate is there, and we recognize its effects. Surely we can tackle it without identifying where furries place as a group. I disagree, and that relates back to what I discussed earlier, how an outsider's perspective is clouded when presented with a lack of definitions. As furries, we can
Why do people hate furries? Exhibit A, this video.
already differentiate between groups of people within the fandom. A third party or a powerful figure that could benefit furries may not see the situation so clearly. If a third party were to
Okay. Right. Now it makes sense. They're discussing a package to present to authority.
How an outsider's perspective is clouded when presented with a lack of definitions. As furries, we can already differentiate between.
So like how pedophiles went, oh, we need to take control. The label really matters. We need to be called minor attracted people. We need to take on the form and use the terminology that people are more receptive to regarding these fights. We need to be minor attracted people. The furries are adopting pedophile strats in an attempt to make themselves seem less like pedophiles.
Between groups of people within the fandom. A third party or a powerful figure that could benefit furries may not.
A powerful figure that could benefit furries. I love the euphemistic discussion. Oh, you know, if people have a lack of clarity in definitions, you mean if you don't force people to say they believe something, if you don't have an orthodoxy, if you don't have a politically correct way to understand and talk about furries, people will say something else and think something else. The furries are like, oh Lord, I've seen what you've done for trans people, please do it for me.
Not see the situation.
Please. We want to be the next group it's illegal to say the wrong thing about. Please.
Situation so clearly. If a third party were to ask, what is a furry, how would we be able to answer their question? It is
Right, that's not about... that. You don't need that to fight hate or anything like that. Moron. That's just PR. You're just discussing, like, hobby PR.
integral that we are able to provide understanding on the issues at hand. A lack of definition can be misleading when juxtaposed to a heavy scrutiny in the mass level of terrible stories that are perpetuated online. Take the 2018 Zoosatus leaks as an example. When furries look at this story, we see a tragic situation involving several non-furries, but more importantly, furries who we trusted, friends, acquaintances, whatever. Now put on your outside...
Oh, so you're all connected. What do you mean? So it wasn't just a random furry. It's someone you trusted and your friends? Wait, what?
Outsider goggles and look again. An outsider could distinguish two primary groups, furries and zoophiles, the latter being more common than the former. As an outsider, it is understandable...
What? Wait, what?
Zoophiles. Look again. An outsider could distinguish two primary groups, furries and zoophiles, the latter being more common than the former.
Right. I have to assume he means they're more common in this story. My guy is talking about doing PR for furries and says the sentence, furries and zoophiles, the latter more common than the former. Also, they're not two different... Draw a Venn diagram. There's crossover. There are furries who are zoosadists. There are zoosadists. Sorry, zoophiles who are furries. Zoophiles and furries. He either mixed it up or... Right, folks, this guy sucks shit at communicating. I'm gonna bet he means in this story. In this story, there are more zoophiles than furries. He's doing the thing that's like... He's doing the thing where pedophiles go, child molesters and pedophiles are two different things. It sounds like he's doing that.
As an outsider, it is understandable how one could be left uninformed on the differences between furries and zoophiles.
It's the pedo rhetoric. It's the pedophile versus child molester.
Or they may leave...
Don't be copying your PR strat from pedos. It's not gonna go well. It looks really bad.
...of a tainted view on the furry population. Of course, as most furries would likely explain, the differences between furries and zoophiles are vast. Without their...
Are they vast, though? Is a furry closer to a zoophile than someone who isn't a furry?
context definitions forming distinctions between the two groups is less likely to be made, causing possibly dangerous conclusions. Of course, we know that no such preventions were ever made. Instead, the much more marketable anti-furry clickbait was abused, resulting in copious misinformation. Labels are necessary.
Are you supposed to see that and not be freaked out?
And they are fundamental in prevention of further discrimination. All of which brings me to one last social factor in considering further.
You're gonna dedicate the time you have set aside for social action and change to making sure people know there's a difference between people who want to f*** animals and people who get turned on by cartoon animals. Go ahead! I think you're wasting your time.
The labels.
If that's your social justice cause, go ahead.
Who would I be affecting through the wording of my conclusion? This is a question of ethics, and a question I asked in a community post if it was insensitive.
Question for a video. Insensitive or wrong when people call the furry fandom or furries in general a minority group. 13% said yes, 16% said no. Some percentage said a little bit. Largest single answer, more than half it looks like. Must have been. Depends on the context.
Or wrong to label the furry fandom as a minority group. People were mixed on the question. Admittingly, the wording of my question was as vague as possible, so depends on the context being the most popular response makes sense. But all of that isn't exactly necessary. I was only testing for one thing.
Okay.
My concern comes from the 19% of people who either answered yes or a little bit. That was a whole 19% of the entire vote, or about 450 people. What risk would I be playing in answering the question to that amount of people? label. It is a genuine concern that I must take into account when analyzing what the term means. Chances are that a few of these answers came from people of color or some already established minority group. If I were to lump furries into a similar category, I may cause an issue by undermining what their minority went through. I may be.
Here's how we get back to the Holocaust section. Also, yes, do you think he was saying undermining? This is, I told you, it's come back to the Holocaust, with the idea of don't call things a Holocaust unless it's on the level of the Holocaust. Now it's like don't call something a minority group unless its suffering's on the same level as every other minority group.
Ignoring any historical context which allowed these groups to constitute the term minority. I can rationalize that thinking, I'm queer myself.
These groups constitute the label.
And it's going to take a bit of effort to move around that and come to a conclusion that satisfies all parties. When I asked my community what they thought about labeling furries as a minority group, nearly all of the comments identified the term was insensitive to already established.
I thought you suggested to us that all furries are queer. By saying it's a sub-minority of queer, all furries are... Furry itself isn't a minority group, but it's still covered by LGBTQ, with what you said. You're under the umbrella of minority group.
Minority groups. Why is this? What exclusivity comes from the label minority that separates it from other conventional definitions?
Uh-oh, it's about to get red-pilled up in this.
Through my comments and my own rationality, I determined 3 possible causes.
Through my comments and my own rationality, I am enlightened by my own power of deduction, not by any phony god or master.
Severity, innateness, and choice. Let's address those in reverse order as they significantly affect our conclusion.
Choice. Does the label minority allow fluctuation between identifying and not? This is a tricky one, and before we even question the fluidity about the term,
He's himself. Whether it's a choice or not is regarding it allowing fluidness and identifying it as or not. Hey guys, I'm gay. Hey, I'm not gay. LGBT, or at least LGB, not a minority now. Good job, brother.
minority? What about furries? Do you choose to be a furry, or is the choice influenced by external factors?
Don't go down this path. If you're going to call something an innate characteristic because elements of you led to you making that choice, literally nothing isn't innate. If you're going to go down the deterministic path to say that anything is an innate characteristic, if you couldn't avoid going down that path, then hey, everything is. Stop.
My personal belief puts furries into a sort of grey area when it comes to choice. Let me explain it this way. If being a furry was a choice, people choose to be here with the freedom to decide otherwise. Why do we exist? Why would we willingly sign ourselves up for this? Why is anthropomorphism so prominent in human history? Why does it feel like a requirement for some people's expression and to just function?
Shit.
Should furries even...
A requirement to function? Actual furry mysticism. He thinks you can be born furry.
experience a feeling of true self if furry was just a choice? I'm not saying that there isn't any fluidity in how you choose to identify as a furry or not. What I'm saying is that social influences may play more of a role than we think. LGBT as a safe space is one example for sure, but more significantly, I would turn to cognitive factors such as autism and anxiety, which use anthropomorphism as a sort of tool for compensation, creating
This sounds like the most autistic way of explaining how someone becomes a furry artist.
An anthropomorphized identity allows one to easily express themselves through a furry character, something that is incredibly beneficial to both autistic and anxious communities.
I'd say it's incredibly detrimental to their well-being, actually. It's a bizarro cope that alienates them from their local communities and the general population of humanity. It feels like a life raft, I suppose, to them, but it's actually a life raft full of asbestos that squirts out into their lungs when they grab it.
This could be why the furry fandom is often utilized to identify one's true self. It is a vessel for human expression and a tool for social behavior.
Hey brother, I thought that you didn't think it was literally what you really are. I thought that was Therians. Or is it Therians think they're animals, you think you're your OC, and that's the difference? You're muddying things now, brother. You're muddying things a lot. So the difference between Therians and furries isn't that Therians think they're the thing and furries don't. It's that Therians think they're an animal and furries think they're their OC. It's getting worse.
Get all pretentious and quote poet Oscar Wilde, man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth.
This conflicts with the idea that the furry identity is your true self. Because then not having the fursuit would be wearing a mask. My understanding of this Oscar Wilde quote was that it was about anonymity. You can't shove this in when you've discussed the fursuit being part of your true identity. Because then not having the fursuit is you hiding who you really are, and does not analogize with this effectively or accurately.
One can choose to drop the mask, but in turn sacrifice a piece of what makes them whole, a part of their true self.
Choice shares many parallels.
One can choose to drop the mask, but in turn sacrifice a piece of what makes them whole, a part.
I think he doesn't understand. I do not think that quote is Oscar Wilde saying, put on your fursuit to become your true self and then you can speak freely. I believe the idea is if you obscure who you really are, you can speak without fear of it being attached. You'll tell the truth. The implication being that most people are locked down from being able to say what they really want to.
Of their true self.
Choice shares many parallels with innateness, the clause that you have to be born into a minority to constitute it. Many would argue that you're not born into what makes a furry, but you're born into the factors that influence that decision.
Every single thing you do, you've been born into a situation that has led to you doing that or becoming that. Because there are things humans do that you wouldn't be able to do if you weren't born or weren't a human. You have to be more specific than that.
On the other hand, you could look at anthropomorphism through history and society. We tell our stories from the perspective of anthro-animals. We give toys of anthro-animals to children, and we use these anthro-animals as a vessel for human emotion. Just looking at history in a weird term of
as a vessel for semen.
A phrase, it may be more human to be part animal. Historically speaking, cultures individually develop their own.
I mean, humans are entirely animals. We already are animals. As Circle Lurk says, yes.
Own interpretations of anthropomorphism. Egyptians revered the lion as a god. Their god Death was half human, half canine. Ancient Indian deity Ganesha is attributed with the head of an elephant. The Hebrew text Haggadah features
attributed with
iconography of bird-headed Jewish men, women, and children. You may even turn to these ancient Japanese scrolls of frolicking animals.
Yo, it's a rabbit with a no horny hammer.
Featuring as described. What's going on here?
No, Whaler, ancient drawings of animals, you know, Aesop's fables, they're there to tell us that you are literally a fox. I am literally a fox molding over grapes.
Why is there a reoccurring pattern? And what does it tell us about anthropomorphism? I can't say for sure. I only understand what is displayed in front of me, which is a history of behavior too common to be coincidence. Conclusively, this is not significant enough to—
Yeah, it's not a coincidence! There are animals all over the world! And we see they behave funny, and then we imagine what if, and we associate them with ideas. I don't think these two people drawing monkeys is a coincidence. Yeah, they've both seen monkeys. You retard. I can't do.
Ignore choice factors in furry self-identification. Thus, the clause of innate and choice cannot be determined with 100% satisfaction. At its current stage, I have no conclusive defense against comments which argue either position. I understand that can result in a heated debate. Some furries may feel as though they were born with this furry trait, and others may think
dog, please.
That's ludicrous. It's all part of a conversation that just may be saved for a better day. In a future where there's more information, there is however one final clause that can be more easily determined. Severity. Does the label of minority constitute a severity of discrimination or historical context?
Does the label constitute a severity? My man can't talk. He's using an old, like, ChatGPT model or something. What is this?
Whilst anthropomorphism has existed for tens of thousands of years, the community of furry has only existed since early 1980, a fraction of the time. Therefore, we lack the history found in other minority groups. Those groups have already established themselves as a minority far before furries came to exist.
He's describing it as like an achievement, as something you do, rather than a description that's accurate. Is he just thinking about this in terms of... He's got his eyes on the prize. Seoxer, I think he uses language like establish because he has legal protection and things like that in mind. Legal protection, privileges and whatnot. Becoming a protected class in mind. Remember earlier, this guy discussed we need to be careful with definitions, we need the right propaganda and PR so that a powerful third party who can benefit furries won't be turned off of us. This is from the perspective of seeking power and influence. So, to him, being recognized as a minority group is something you achieve and establish yourself as.
Even though furries have existed for longer than many of its inhabitants,
it presents itself as discursive, but really, this guy's got his eyes on the prize.
And hilariously, many of its antagonists as well, this pales in comparison to other established groups. Clause 1. Minority is a special term granted to emphasize severity. I ask you to recall one of the first examples I gave in this video, that of the Holocaust and reappropriation of certain labels. I believe that this case provides insight into why furries aren't classed as a minority group.
Why furries aren't classed. Not why they shouldn't be. Ooh. So my man does recognize that it's a matter of it being a faux pas, of it being considered improper or, cringe to say you're a minority, regardless of whether it's right or not. Is that the inference?
Holocaust was granted a certain speciality to it, signifying
the Holocaust was granted a speciality to it.
Its importance. So too does the term minority. It is a stature of hate and oppression. It is a badge of honor to signify your persistence. Calling furries the same as the...
No, it's not. Minority isn't a badge of honor, it's a description. It can also be a category useful when outlining who might be affected by legislation, for instance, or who might be considered a protected class. It's not a badge of honor.
Or any other genocide or holocaust. It fits the definition, sure, but it runs a direct comparison to the harsher equivalent, an undermining severity that was set during the reappropriation of the word minority. Whether there actually is some innate psychological force which play a role in anthropomorphic expression, the exclusivity of minority group doesn't ever seem to fit furries. This dilemma is a catch-22. No matter how we cut this metaphorical cake, it doesn't feel right to class furries as a minority group. It could
Wait, how's it a catch-22?
Fit any definition for minority which you throw at it, but can never beat this final clause.
Even though the sources from which I derive a lot of this information from use the term minority onto furries. The Waikato study fixates about furries being a minority group. The tool that they use to identify the support and risk factors is called the Mayer Minority Model of Stress. It is beneficial to look at this community through a minority lens.
Is that it?
But it can be unethical to title it as such.
Unethical to describe furries as a minority, I suppose because it's offensive to, for instance, black people because they've earned their golden star for suffering. Minority is like their golden star. What the f*** is this worldview? Damn, why are furries hated and bullied? Woo!
What does this mean for our label? Is there a method of labeling which allows for models such as Mayer's to be utilized regardless of the strict minority label? In other words, can we label furries as something other than minority but still look at them through the same lens?
Through all that I've examined, I have a conclusive answer according to myself. I would like to emphasize that I am not a professional and therefore my word should not be taken as the complete truth.
Even if you were, I wouldn't take your words as the complete truth. That's a mistake.
I interpret the situation will be different from other people as this is based on my own belief. I believe a well-inclusive label for the furry community is an emergent minority with sub-minority characteristics.
Come on. Pre-minority. We haven't suffered enough to become a minority, but we're on the way there. Get ready for us. Get ready to add us to all your hate crime legislation. Get ready. We're filed under queer, so we count, but we're not quite at the level where we're a minority unto ourselves. We're getting there. We're up-and-comers! An up-and-coming minority! We will earn our badge of minority once we've suffered enough. This is disease. Yeah, furries are deranged. I'm sorry. This is fucking crazy. This is so whack.
The etymology of this breaks down into two categories.
It doesn't matter. A word's meaning doesn't come from what parts of the word mean. It's not imbued with meaning through etymology. Right? You could come up with a new word. You could use silly terms for it, and as long as everyone is on the same page, that's what it means.
We have subminority, which considers the LGBT roots and the issues as well as the population statistics within the fandom. It also considers ableism by the restriction of tools vital in the benefit of mentally impaired communities. Thus,
oh, making fun of a fursuit is hate in the way that a hate crime might be, because hypothetically an autist could use it to help themselves.
there is a primary and a secondary minority system that makes up the sub.
That would be discrimination against that group. Right? Which is not the queer group. You're saying it's a sub-minority of queer. You've taken something that lacked clarity and made it 10 times less clear. And not through being accurate, just through being wrong and demented.
Minority label. Primary LGBT, secondary ableism. Furthermore, the emergent minority
That's my Call of Duty loadout.
considers differences in discrimination that separate the furry fandom from these other minority groups, in particular those which comprise the subminority section. I chose the word emergent because of the rising population of furries and the recency of the fandom. If history is an
Hey, just like the ancestors of black slaves, we lack a history.
important factor in what considers a minority, then emergent symbolizes a lack of history that is currently in its youth. The term does its job at communicating a form of minority, thus allowing for examinations through a minority lens, whilst also conveying where furries place in relation.
Hey, how did that institute manage to study them using a minority model without having this terminology available to them? How is that possible, bro? Crazy.
To these other groups. I'd like to reiterate that this term is not perfect. It is made to simplify a problem and create a more generic understanding of a social group which does require some degree of assistance. In part, this term is meant to progress my own.
Furries require assistance, and you want to get them categorized as a minority, ultimately. You think they're on the way. Yeah, Vanilla, exactly. What kind of assistance?
Understanding of this fandom.
I see what you've done. Lord, I've seen what you've done for the trans. Please. I want this for me.
To rationalize our place in the world and to...
I'm sorry, I think you have to recognize something has gone wrong with programs to help the disadvantaged and law to protect the vulnerable, when there are groups of people who have a hobby of dressing up like upright animals, who view being categorized the same as those groups as a goal to work towards and achieve. I think you have to recognize something is really, 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 really wrong.
Envision a progressive future that...
Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? A minority!
Accommodates furries into society. I spent a considerable term is meant to progress my own understanding of this fandom, to rationalize our place in the world and to envision a progressive future that accommodates furries into society.
What fantasy world do you live in? Can we listen to that one more time?
Assistance. In part, this term is meant to progress my own understanding of this fandom, to rationalize our place in the world and to...
The furries' place in the world.
To envision a progressive future that accommodates furries into society.
A progressive future that accommodates furries into society. Delusional. I like anthropomorphic animal cartoons, so I need a program to help accommodate me into society. Society needs to accommodate my love of dragon cocks. Like, what does this mean? Tell me. Forget not knowing how to achieve this. Forget your problem with picking the correct name for yourselves or whatever you want. The correct labels. What does that future society look like? Is it people walking around with fursuits all the time? What is it? Do you want a furry nation state?
Considerable amount of time conveying my reasoning for this term, the effects that discrimination has on this community, and the consequences that we face.
You didn't actually in any way demonstrate that the mental health issues were a result of discrimination or hatred towards furries. You just showed us that according to Fur Science, they exist. And according to the other survey and study, they exist. You didn't actually prove or demonstrate what proportion of those are a result of bullying. You showed correlation, but then you also showed that one of these places, the Fur Science place, suggests that these are people who were bullied regardless of being furries before they even knew about the furry fandom, which undermines your point.
If you believe that there isn't an issue, then I don't have anything to say to you. What I hope mostly is to incorporate these terms and definitions into how we market this fandom. How we...
Ta-da! I didn't think he'd say it out loud. Less intelligent than a pedophile with a claw hand. The claw hand pedo does the same thing as this, but he doesn't say that out loud.
We address any issues and how we progress moving forward. That is why I highlight defining such concepts under key importance, because it is important that we understand who we are, and this isn't happening in all the key places where it needs to be.
Furries need to find themselves. Come on, man.
Schools are supposed to provide safety, but equally they should supply education. Education that I feel is not being met.
What kind of education, furry man who wants to market being a furry? We need Furry Identity Month at school.
During a sociology class, an interesting instance of furries was brought up, and the reaction from both my teacher and the students signified to me where the weak points in our system lay.
The weak points in the education system exposed by people not being furry fans.
Appeared in a presentation about social groups. The teacher presenting it was struck with confusion and asked the entire class, "Are furries those people who dress like animals?" Who then promptly erupted into laughter. Not by the teacher's word was anything wrong, but the lack thereof. The inability to recognize a prominent social group which I know
A prominent social group? So why can't you be called a minority then? Prominent compared to what other social group? Black people? Like, what do you mean in the context of discussing minorities?
Catered to several kids in that class, including me. She left herself to the whim of high school students, a blank canvas for them to paint their perceptions on. I hear their Instagram feeds out loud during break. I know the content which many of them consume, and I know how that content
Maybe they watch Death to Furry content because of you, though. Maybe you don't feel like this and are upset because they watch that. Maybe the causality goes the other way around, though.
Perceives me. I am blessed with the fortune to be happy with my identity. I have an audience of encouraging subscribers and an online group of friends that I know accept me. And I can accept myself on many fronts. Yet I can also rationalize that others are burdened with far, far worse. And I know the comfort that can be made when an authoritative figure shows their support. Education essentially tells your story without you
We need pro-furry teachers.
Having to say anything. You avoid any risk of danger and vicariously speak through the institution. I am okay, but others could benefit. This is just one way which I envision a progressive society. Of course,
he wants the education system to act as furry PR for his emergent minority group. My guy, I say it again and again, my guy looked at what's happening with transgender people and went, I want that for me! Furries need that deal!
Of course, it is far from the only method. I find education to be our most powerful resource, but this can be provided through many different mediums. Hey, it would be almost poetic to have the media help fix the issue, when they were the one who have large stakes in creating it. Media can be broken down into two main categories, traditional and social media. Traditional would tackle those pesky news broadcasts, TV shows, radio, newspaper.
He probably does mean emerging. I thought he was about to go for emergent, as in it's a minority that comes about through the interaction of other minorities. I thought he was going to say, like, retardation and gayness combined to make furry, so it's emergent in that sense.
And media typically directed towards older populations. Since there are far less of these media conglomerates than, say, people on the internet, you can target these stories, you can request specific information and get better information to these broadcasts a lot easier. Or at least a target to direct
actual furry propagandist.
your request towards is a lot more clear and specific. Social media is strange because there is a lot of it, and usually I would say the treatment for social media comes as a byproduct to everything else, because the people on social media are just that, people. So if they are educated through school and traditional media to be accepting towards furries, their statement should echo that. The only other way I feel you could tackle the problem
of young. Hey, furries aren't creepy or weird and you shouldn't keep your children away from us. By the way, we need to get them when they're young. Alright, brother. Nice.
Information is to control those alt-right rabbit holes that have caused events like Pizzagate or Andrew Tate, a sort of crackdown on those echo chambers in online hate speech. Otherwise, to tackle furry hate, you could be doing what furries are already doing, existing. You are providing that alternative to the negative. I briefly touched on this in a previous video, and I feel like I need to emphasize this statement further. I think a lot of people need to hear this. You are doing enough just by existing. You have complete freedom to
I'm waiting for Andrew Tate, the video game.
metaphorically hang up your hat and fucking retire. The world already appreciates your existence. The legacy that you form simply by waking up in the morning, showing the world that despite all of this bullshit, you just don't care. Waking up and choosing to exist is a revolt against discrimination. And
bro, other groups that you already recognize as being minorities don't talk about their life like this. You're saying, oh, we're not on the same level as them, we're slowly working our way up to be on the level of blackness. But then you describe your life as an unending hellscape that you struggle even to open your eyes and face because you like anthro porn or whatever. You like Bambi a bit too much. You describe bigotry as a knife to the heart, and being a furry is salt in that wound. Being a furry is the worst experience you can have. You're saying the politically correct things you feel like you have to, but your true feelings are belied by your flowery statements.
that is powerful enough to make you worth it, a net positive, even when it may not feel like it.
Hello. Don't kill yourself. You're totally a net positive overall, kind of, just about.
My message should not be misconstrued as apathy. Apathy is just what they want from us, to be nothing and to be miserable. But waking up is something, and throwing up a middle finger's one more. Despite everything, the statistics, the discrimination, the hate, the most optimistic thing to know is that we're moving in a positive direction. And if you're
Stay paused, and we're gonna pause everyone else.
anything like me, learning about the world that you live in makes it feel a lot more like home. So here's to learning about this fandom and everything that makes it so great. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you losers next time.
Sorry, on this video about doing PR for furries and the furry fandom, the next recommended video has a thumbnail of, I presume, a tweet that says, "I'm not into baby fur / child stuff." What's going on here? Fiddle a Fox, a showcase in racism and logical fallacies. Furries who used fish for intercourse and fandom. You are the guy making the stories that make people hate furries. Wait, what are you doing? History of messy tales and fantasy etiquette. You have the thumbnail that says poop. I guess they don't really believe what they're saying. A picture of a furry avatar with the worst pedo in thumbnail. And this guy is talking about strategizing to make the furry fandom look better. What am I actually looking at? Is this all just a meme?